Here we are to continue our discussion of violence in games. Historians recognize that much of history is created by or through violence, or the threat of violence, as unfortunate as that is. It's second only to money or wealth as a cause of historical change. I hate to see people engage in presentism, as it's called, pretend that certain aspects of history, such as slavery, didn't exist or should be ignored, as though they never happened, because they're not nice or comfortable for modern sensibilities. That's a way to lose touch with reality. We can also discuss the intent of violence in games. And unfortunately, I've lost the source of this quote, but I thought it was worth using. Quote, "But what is the essential importance, I think, is the purpose of the violent acts. A major difference exists between a just war and a territorial dispute, between a revenge killing and self-defense, between killing on the battlefield and murdering in the streets of San Andreas during a drug deal." Unquote. But I'm not sure this makes a difference to most people where games are concerned. Most of the non-violent board games these days are puzzles disguised as games, that is, somewhere between quite low interaction and no interaction. It's really hard to make a highly interactive game that doesn't take on strong aspects of conflict. But, as I've said before, conflict and violence differ. If violence requires depictions of violent death, then it's fairly easy to make non-violent tabletop games even if shooting is going on, as in a war game. It's harder in video games because people expect to constantly see details of what's happening. If there's killing going on, they expect to see the killing happening. Now let's consider business sims. Businesses must operate with the laws of their nation, which tend to strongly moderate violence. Acquire, a classic business game, would be my choice as a conflict game with no violence involved. Yes, auctions are a form of violence, as is even exclusive worker placement or drafting, because an opponent can thwart you. Parallel competitions, which I used to call contests, are certainly competitions, but there's no way, at least within the rules framework of the game, to affect other players. In a parallel competition, everyone tries to do something that's measured in some way, and whoever does it best wins, as in many Olympic individual competitions or hot dog eating. You outdo your opponent rather than beat him or her. It's a form that's less common in team games, especially outdoor team games such as football and soccer. What about novels? I think we'd discover, if we tried to categorize novels in these ways, that conflict is very common in novels, because conflict is at the center of a good story, but depictions of violent death would be rare compared with occasions of conflict. Now, Oliver Kiley has a game schema about interaction and conflict in games, which I have listed here. To him, there can be direct interaction, which is being able to take actions that directly affect another player's game state. There's indirect interaction, being able to change the game state in a way that affects other players. No interaction, you can't change the game state in a way that affects other players. And necessary destruction, you have to destroy or steal your opponent's assets to win, for example in chess. But none of these requires depictions of violent death. Not even close. So to summarize, conflict is a natural state of games and novels. Depictions of violence are additions by some designers that are usually unnecessary to good play. Thanks for listening.